Commander Legends Baldur's Gate spoiler season has started off with a bang. We've got ELMINSTER as a planeswalker. We've got one of the most busted pirate lords you're ever gonna see. And on top of that, we have the actual Baldur's Gate.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for some Baldur's Gate D&D MTG action. So with no further ado, since I'm super excited, let's dive into the cards. We're going to start with ELMINSTER. Behold, the man of the hour. We all asked why he wasn't in the original Dungeons & Dragons set, and Wizards has delivered. ELMINSTER is upon us, finally available in luxury cardboard rectangle form. So 1 blue, 1 white, and 3 get you a 5 loyalty planeswalker with the following abilities. Whenever you scry, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards looked at while scrying this way. +2, draw a card, then scry 2. -3, exile the top card of your library, create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying equal to that card's mana value. And ELMINSTER can be your commander. This card is a lot of fun. Right out of the gates, I love the fact that ELMINSTER is a planeswalker because it actually makes perfect sense. ELMINSTER is one of the most powerful mages of all time, right? I'm not just talking about in D&D. If you go across all fantasy history, ELMINSTER is incredibly powerful and potent, right? He has traveled to a whole bunch of different planes. So having him as a planeswalker, even if Magic the Gathering planes are different than Dungeons & Dragons planes, makes perfect sense. He has that level of capability. And his depth of knowledge of Magic is illustrated in this card, right? Like, he knows so much about Magic that he's basically on great terms with the goddess of Magic. And his abilities really tie well into the concept of wizardry, right? First of all, whenever you scry, basically every time you gain knowledge, ELMINSTER teaches you how to use that knowledge for increasing the power of your spell casting, right? By reducing the casting cost of your spell. So the more knowledge you gain while ELMINSTER is around, the more he teaches you to focus it, right? And then look at his first ability. It's +2. You get to draw a card and scry 2. So he's giving you power instantly, but also allowing you to sculpt and know the future at the same time, while also that scry ability ties into his first ability, reducing the cost of instants or sorceries, tying in again to that concept of being a master mage. I also adore the fact that his ultimate doesn't require you to build it up, right? You just go -3. You can use his ability right away. And it very much loves scry. If you put a huge casting cost spell on top of your library and then feed it into your graveyard with his ultimate style ability, you can get a massive amount of fairy dragons, right? Even just think about an additional copy of ELMINSTER. You already have one on the board, maybe you have another in your hand, one on top, you go boom, feed him into the graveyard, now you've got 5 1/1s. I love that ELMINSTER shows up right away, fully capable of doing everything he's going to do for you. Now, I understand that we're going to run into the Tarrasque problem here with ELMINSTER, where people are going to go, ELMINSTER is so incredibly powerful that this card feels like it doesn't properly encapsulate the power of the card, the same way that the Tarrasque didn't feel as strong as the Tarrasque. But just so you know, when it comes to Planeswalker cards, they essentially just represent a fraction of the being's power that they are willing to use on your behalf because you have some sort of alliance with them. So this just essentially represents ELMINSTER being an ally of yours, and these are the powers he's willing to use on your behalf. They do not encompass all of his powers. And turning to the artwork, I love that he is just shown in what I consider to be a very traditional wizard style, right down to the staff that looks similar to the one that I wield in my I am a wizard intro, right? Like, he has got everything that you need to be a glorious wizard, right down to the big flowing wizardly beard. You got the staff with the feathers coming off of it, the flowing robes, everything, the magic crackling on the fingertips. He looks epic and like original D&D wizard there. And in the borderless version, he looks more impressive ultimately. He looks like a more wizened adventurer. He looks like he just honestly looks tougher and beefier. And I've always loved fairy dragons. They feel so whimsical. Dragons are normally gigantic hulking beasts of destruction, and fairy dragons are quite opposite. They're whimsical and mischievous, and I don't know, man, I just love the fact that he summons them up. And Elminster wielding a sword, oh, it's so cool. You know what I mean? Elminster and Gandalf, the sword-wielding wizards, like you can see him drawing the blade while he's got this staff held out in front of him. And the staff looks like, okay, it's just a piece of wood, but you know there's going to be a bunch of magic infused in there. Man, Elminster really gets me fired up. Moving on, we're talking about White Plume Adventurer next. 1 white and 2 for a 3/3 Orc Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Okay, so taking the initiative essentially is entering into the new dungeon that we talked about. You remember when they did all the Baldur's Gate spoilers? We already are not spoilers, but the leak. We already talked about the Underdark sort of whatever it's called dungeon. There's one new dungeon that comes with Baldur's Gate, and this initiative allows you to go into it, and it keeps basically recurring and allowing you to go back into the dungeon over and over. But if your opponent hits you, they can take the initiative. So the initiative goes back and forth, and it's essentially a way to feed more delving into the dungeon, right? So this new dungeon is a little bit weird in that it doesn't operate quite the same way as the other dungeons. You have to do initiative to enter it instead of delving the dungeon, but once you're in it, then you can delve through the dungeon normally. So, White Plume Adventurer says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, untap a creature you control. If you've completed a dungeon, untap all creatures you control instead. So obviously, if you have completed a dungeon, this thing is nuts. Getting to untap all your creatures every turn is crazy. But being able to untap just one creature every turn with this is really solid too. If you have like a creature with an awesome activated ability, right? Or if you just want to be able to swing with a bunch of creatures and then set yourself up with defenders each successive opponent's turn, right? I don't know. Overall, this card seems okay to me. It doesn't grab you and shake you hardcore, but it feels like it might have some genuine underlying potential. I do like the artwork a lot. It's got that D&D feel, like you've gone down into some kind of caverns. There's a fair bit of light, honestly, in the cavern here for the torch that she has as well, right? But whatever. I love this massive, pulling on that. She actually doesn't really even look like a 3/3. She's got more of like a 1/1 or a 2/2 vibe, but whatever, right? She's orc. So she's hauling on this massive ring that's going to pull this is the entrance to the dungeon. It straight up has great flavor. Moving on, we have the actual Baldur's Gate. I was not expecting this, although it feels pretty straightforward, right? So it's a legendary land gate, and it has tap to add a colorless mana, or to untap it, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of other gates you control. Now, this is a huge step up for gates, because let's be very real. There aren't a ton of cards that care about gates, and there's just enough to make gates attractive, but not enough out there to make them truly viable. However, when you can bam out a ton of mana with this, that changes things up considerably. I believe there's at least a dozen different gates in Magic, so this could get you ahead by 10 mana. And the flavor text is fun too. Of course I know what eponymous means. It's a little horse. The artwork, I mean, it's literally just Baldur's Gate. I have to admit, the artwork doesn't get me fired up at all. Maybe because I've never played any Baldur's Gate video games or anything. So seeing this doesn't trigger any kind of reaction inside of me overall. But yeah, it's a solid card. This is a weird Cabal Coffers Baldur's Gate Mania legendary whatever. And that's all I have to say. So I'm moving on to the next card. And that is a weird one. Faceless one, indeed. 5 mana for a 3/3 legendary enchantment creature background. Your brain, what does this even mean? And it says, if Faceless one is your commander, choose a color before the game begins. Faceless one is the chosen color. And it has choose a background. You can have a background as a second commander. So this is really confusing because it's a background that lets you choose another background. The idea behind the faceless one is this is supposed to be draft filler that will allow you to play the color combination you want to play in Commander, all right? So in the previous Commander set, we had Prismatic Piper, which was a legendary that you could choose to have be any color. But this one also counts as a background, which is a really weird sort of scenario. But if you're not familiar with how background works, it's very, very similar to the partner mechanic. So a background is an enchantment that will sit in your command zone along with your commander, and all the normal rules apply. You cast it from your command zone, commander taxes, all that sort of thing. So it allows you to partner up instead of a creature and a creature and an enchantment. To do so, your commander must have the choose a background option. So the faceless one is a background and can be chosen to go along with other regular commanders that say choose a background, but also can be your commander and you can choose a background to go with it, which is a little bit hard to wrap your head around. But I adore this artwork so much, man. It's awesome. You've got these two figures in front of the moon, and you've got like a head that's unraveling off the one in the front, and you've got the other one going on. Like, I'm not sure exactly what's supposed to be going on in this artwork, but the idea of faceless one choosing a background, is this like somebody who was sort of like a nomadic wanderer, or maybe somebody living in poverty in rags and whatever, and then now they're turning into an aristocrat? So like they're being unmade on the left hand side and their personality is being transferred into the body of like the nobility with this much better garb. This is really, really cool artwork. And a funky card that will ultimately just be, let's be real, draft chaffed, right? If you're not drafting, you're not going to care about this card. It'll never see use outside of it, which is a shame because this artwork is just awesome. Moving on, we've got Lozan Dragon's Legacy. I found this to be a really interesting card. 1 red, 1 blue, and 3 for a 4/2 legendary dragon shaman with flying. And it has, whenever you cast an adventure spell or dragon spell, she deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. I like the fact that this is not only a dragon lover, but specifically an adventure spell lover. It's a very strange combination, but it feels great. The flavor, what does the flavor text says? She channels myth and memory into waves of deadly arcane force. That is really cool. So, oh man, she can harness the power of mythological stories? That is epic. I love it. Is this a genuine character in Dungeons and Dragons that already exists? It must be. Somebody has to know more about this. Tell me about Lozan harnessing the power of actual mythology and turning it into physical magic is impressive. And I just realized that there's a dragon around her. That magic flowing around her just like looked like waves of blue lightning magic or water magic to me. I didn't notice the maw of the dragon opening up. That's incredible. The flavor on this is so epic. Lozan is really, really cool, man. That's great. And the rulebook frame looks all right too. Moving on. We've got Astarion the Decadent, a vampire elf rogue. That's trippy. Vampire elves are horrific. 1 black, 1 white, and 4 for a 4/4 with death, touch, and lifelink. Like, elves are so attuned into the natural world, and vampires are living paragons of unlife. So those two being housed in the same being is such an intense concept. At the beginning of your end step, choose 1. Feed. Target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn, or friends. You gain life equal to the amount of life you gained this turn. I do like the fact that this can be used in either way. You can either be like, yo, I'm going to hammer somebody, bam. Or I'm going to go, you know what? I'm just going to gain a bunch of life. I'm not going to really go at you. I'm not going to feed on you. I like the duality of it. It fits perfectly into a white-black concept. The artwork shows this, like, he looks like a noble to me. I'm surprised he doesn't have the noble. Well, I guess depending on how he acts, he could be a roguish noble. Is this at a campsite or something? I don't know, man. A decadent, like, elf vampire is such a cool concept to me. I really like the main artwork more than the rule book artwork. Although he does have kind of like a jaunty ranger vibe. He does kind of feel more roguish and thievery-ish there, right? And it's got that old school D&D vibe, which I very much enjoy. Then we've got Battle Angels of Tyr. This is a solid card. 2 white and 2 for a 4/4 flyer with Myriad. These Angel Knights have the ability that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player has more cards in hand than each other player. Then you create a treasure token if that player controls more lands than each other player. Then you gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player. The first time I read this card, I didn't even see the Myriad. And I went 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer that can net you a treasure token, draw you a card, and gain you life? Like, that seems pretty nutty. But then my brain went, well, yeah, I mean, you're not going to really get all these benefits, because what are the chances that the one opponent you attack is going to have that? And then when I read it again and see it as Myriad, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So it's going to make a copy of this, and it's going to swing at each of your opponents. And any of them that meet these conditions, you're going to net off of. So you could theoretically draw multiple cards off this, make multiple treasure tokens, and gain multiples times 3 of life, which is so crazy to me. This feels really, really strong. I mean, I can see why it's mythic. I will say as well that I'm not as experienced in Commander as I am with some other formats. So maybe my ability to gauge cards is maybe I'm not taking into account how much life people have and what the board stays like overall. But I just feel like this is bonkers, man. It's bonkers. And I love the little nod to Commander in the artwork, where you're normally going to be, in most cases, probably playing 4-player games of Commander, right? So if you swing with this, the Myriad's going to make 2 more copies. You're going to have the original swinging at one opponent. The Myriad's going to make 2 more copies. So in the artwork on both of these, you have the angel in the front, who's like the main angel, right? And then the 2 in the back are the ones created by Myriad that are sent out to smash into your other opponents. I love it. And I love the difference between the 2 artworks, right? Showing this squad flying high above the courtyard with this sense of perspective looking down while the feathers drift down is an impressive, we're going to defend this straight up from the air, because this is some kind of aerial defender, right? Like, we are coming in from the perspective of we are up in the air looking down at this. And then the perspective of the board of this version is now we're down at the ground looking up at a keep that is being defended by these battle angels. And I love the snowy white wings on these angels, man. Honestly, it works so well, specifically with their skin tones and everything. It's the same way that when you have black skin and you wear a white suit, it pops gorgeously. Same kind of deal happening here, man. Those white snowy wings look incredible. I love it. Visually gorgeous. Probably looks insane foiled. After that, we've got Nalia der Arnis. Whoa, she's got kind of like an Oko Chill vibe going on, right? 1 black, 1 white, and 1 for a 3/3 human rogue. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard spells from the top of your library. So this is a party chick right here. She loves to party. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. That's awesome. She can turn a full party into just a destructive force that is next level. And the whole, she's got that rogue vibe to her. She looks roguish. She looks confident enough that she could turn a party into a full-on death squad, right? And I like the fact that you can look at the top of your deck and find these individuals like she's sneaky and out there recruiting individuals. I have no idea who she represents in the world of D&D, but really cool card. Moving on, we've got Captain Negrathrod. This guy is epic! Not only does he give you awesome vibes of Pirates of the Caribbean, what a fun set of movies those are. Maybe near the end they start to taper, but seriously, a lot of fun on those adventures. So, Captain N is 1 black, 1 blue. Captain Nintendo, you guys ever watch that back in the day? Anyways, Captain N, 1 black, 1 blue, and 3. For a 3/6, his toughness is insane. He's a horror pirate. Horrors you control have menace, which means he has menace, right? Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. Again, he's a horror. So hit him, mill for 3 cards. At the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it into the battlefield under your control. How insane is this? His high toughness is going to make it really hard to get rid of him. He is going to have to be double blocked to be taken care of. Every time he hits, he's milling your opponent. That applies to every horror you have. And at beginning of every one of your end steps, you get one of their artifacts or creatures that went to the graveyard because of any ability you have. If there's other ways, if you made your opponent discard cards to the graveyard, you milled them, whatever else, you destroy creatures they have in play. Like, you don't need to swing with him, right? You don't have to do that. You can literally have him out on the board and just go, I'm going to play a spell that destroys your creature. Oh, I'm not going to attack, so you can't block and destroy him. I'll move to the end of my turn. Oh, look, I'll choose that creature I just destroyed and put it straight into play. This thing is busted insane, and I love it. I love every inch of it. The artwork is awesome. He looks so cool and intimidating. I adore this card. This is 1,000,000% going in my cube. Like, I can't even believe how awesome this is. Moving on, we've got Baldurs, Dreadwolf Herald. 1 green, 1 red, and 1 for a 3/3 legendary human druid. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. 1 tap, discard a card. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. I really dig the vibe concept of this card. The idea of being able to make wolves from things coming from exile is a nutty idea. It makes me think of a druid that lives in super reclusion, right? That's kind of the idea, where stuff is so exiled that she's like, I'm way out there. I can locate this stuff. I can attune to it. And when I do, I can use that magic to like lick up with these crazy dire wolves, man, or dread wolves, whatever they're called. It is very epic. And I like the fact that this essentially accelerates you by letting you, well, not really accelerate you, but it allows you to smooth your draws and stuff out in terms of, did you draw lands you don't need? Okay, discard it. Exile the top card of your deck, and then you can cast that one instead. Lands that get exiled that way, also, they end up not theoretically being completely useless if you can find a way to play the lands from exile as well. I mean, I guess her ability does that too. If you exiled the land, you are allowed to play it that turn, so you could put the land into play and get the 2/2 wolf. Ultimately, feels pretty solid. Flavor Text says, cities are a blight on the beauty of nature. I feel like she would fit in with the Gruul really well. Now, that's actually the last spoiler we're going to talk about, so big thank you to my patrons. Thanks for coming by, my friends. Links on the screen to more videos. See you next time.